A great many years ago, oh, so many years ago, there were not so many big cities as there are now, said Mother Nature one day to her children. There was more room everywhere and people almost all had gardens and flowers and could walk just a little distance and gather all the wild flowers they wanted. But the cities grew up and somehow, without meaning to, I'm sure, they pushed the flowers out of the way. Many of the people missed the flowers and the ferns and the shrubs and the nature children, but they couldn't do the work they had to in the city and have gardens, too, for there wasn't any room in the city for the gardens. Well, when the springtime came along one year, after so many cities had grown bigger and so many people had gone to live in the cities, the nature children called and said, Mother Nature, the Dream King has told us that many people from the cities will be out in the country places for holidays and for weekends this spring. So we have thought up a plan. You see, the Dream King tells us that every once in a while the people get very tired from all the business they must do and all the studying they must do, too. So we've decided we would look our very best all the time, so that when the people from the cities come out to see us they may pick some of us and take us home with them so we'll cheer them up. I told them I thought their idea was wonderful. And ever since then the flowers have all looked their best and the shrubs have all looked their best and the ferns have all looked their best, so they could cheer up the city people when they were taken back after holidays. So when any of you are picked and carried to the cities, keep your prettiest and freshest smiles on your faces. And they all promised Mother Nature they would. A little girl named Lillian, said Daddy, had a very sore throat and could only swallow soft foods. I think I will call my desserts my visitors, she said one day, for I will have to have some make-believe games now that I have to be in bed a little while longer. So when lunchtime came and there was cornstarch on her tray, she would say, Welcome, Lord Cornstarch. How is your highness today? Of course you can't talk to me, but I can talk to you, and I will do you the great honor due one of your rank and station, that is, I will eat you. Then she would eat her dessert of cornstarch until it was all gone. When supper time came and she had cornstarch again, she would say, Well, I am glad to see you, Lady Cornstarch. How is your highness this fine evening? I don't suppose your ladyship cares to have a little chat, but I am sure your ladyship wouldn't mind being eaten, And so Lady Cornstarch would disappear. On Jelly Day she would greet her lunchtime jelly by saying, Glad to see you, Prince Jelly. It's nice that you are such a pleasant prince and will slip down so easily. I wouldn't like it at all if you were horrid and stiff, as I imagine some princes might be. Her supper jelly she would greet in this fashion. Good evening, Princess Jelly. How are you this evening? I hope your taste is very fine and that I will enjoy you. And then she would eat, Princess Jelly. And it made the time she had to spend in bed pass much more quickly this way. The fairies had a fancy dress ball last night, commenced Daddy. They all went as different flowers. One little fairy was dressed so she looked like a bright red nasturtium, another was dressed as a pink rambler rose, another as a yellow golden glow, another as a pansy, another as a little forget-me-not, and all of them, in short, in lovely costumes like flowers. The fairy queen wore the costume of the American Beauty rose, and her wand was one tall rose, very full and big and splendid. They had dancing and games and all the elves, the brownies and many of the wood creatures had been invited. But one of the funniest things happened you can imagine. Some of the fairies had dressed themselves as honeysuckles. They kept together and danced together so they would look like a vine. Others had dressed as a vine of morning glories. Pretty soon a buzzing was heard. It was louder than the band of crickets they had engaged for the music. It was louder than the sounds that came from the laughter of the fairies. You see, nobody had thought of such a thing happening. The bumblebees and the hummingbirds, who had all gone to sleep, had in their dreams imagined they saw lovely morning glories still awake and lovely honeysuckles all over the vines. One little bumblebee went to his smaller brother and nudged him, saying, Oh, look over there. Morning glories. The other little bumblebee was about to turn over and go to sleep, for he had scarcely so much as peeped to see, when he, too, suddenly noticed all the morning glories. They awoke all the bumblebees far and near and made so much fuss and noise that they woke up the hummingbirds, who always notice what the bumblebees are up to. Of course the hummingbirds immediately spied the honeysuckles, and you should have seen them scamper. When the fairies realized what had happened they almost lost their balance in the dances, for they shook all over with laughter. As the bumblebees and the hummingbirds got nearer they, too, saw that they had made a mistake, but the fairies at once called out, Come to the party and dance, too, and we will give you honey, for we are having it for supper. We couldn't give a ball and dress like flowers without having flower honey for supper. And this delighted them all. Illustration. As the bumblebees got nearer they, too, saw they had made a mistake. Page 182 Did you hear the great news? Asked one of the raspberry bushes of another bush. No, what is the great news? Asked the other raspberry bush. There is going to be a great raspberry hunt today, the first raspberry bush said. Well, if they see us they won't have to hunt very far, the second raspberry bush said. That is so, answered the first raspberry bush, and they know we're here. We let some of our messengers tell them. The only thing is they are not sure whether or not we are ripe, and so they will be delighted when they find how easily we come off the bushes. For when we're ripe we come off easily, and when we're not ripe we stick on and show we aren't ripe enough to come off. I have a true story to tell you this evening, children, said Daddy, of a mockingbird. Mr. Mitchell Mockingbird was his name, and he was a pet in a large family of children. They all loved him, and he could speak a good many words, and he could sing like ever so many birds. He was allowed out of his cage, too. One night Mitchell began to scream. How he did yell! Piercing yells went all through the house. And he hurried from one bedroom to another. He awoke the mother and daddy of the children first, and then he woke up the children. Come. He called. It was a word he could say, and he kept repeating it over and over again. Come, 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 and they all hurried, one after the other, and followed the mockingbird downstairs. What should they see but a tiny blaze, which every few minutes seemed to grow and splutter and burst into a bigger flame. Water. Everyone get water, shouted the children's daddy, and the mockingbird kept calling. Come. They were all thoroughly frightened, but they kept their wits about them and kept filling buckets and jugs with water, which they poured over the flame. After a little while it was out. The mockingbird looked very tired. His eyes blinked as if he could hardly keep awake, and it was just then that every one of them noticed him. Mitchell, you have saved the house and our lives. That fire would have spread, and goodness knows what would have happened, said their daddy. What a fine, brave bird you are. And the children stroked Mitchell and said, Fine, brave bird. Daddy says so, too. Our lovely Mitchell Mockingbird. Mitchell was almost asleep. The fire was out. He had finished his work. He was ready to rest now. He didn't care about praise. But he was happy that they all loved him so. And how he cared for them. He had saved them and they knew it. He was very happy, and in his own bird way he had thought all this out. But to the great surprise of them all, Mitchell said a word they had never known he could say, but it was just the right one. Safe, all safe, said Mitchell, as he went to sleep. Now the milkweed plant is rather thick with a hollow center, and through this center the white milk goes, which gives the plant its food. The milk doesn't care for the air, and so that is why the milk stains our hands when we pick the plants. The leaves are large and of a yellow, gray-green color, while the flowers which grow in clusters are of a pink lavender shade. But the little pods filled with seeds are the things the children like, and if you see a milkweed plant just look at the little pods. I must have milk to drink and to make me strong, said Millie Milkweed. So must I, said Mamie Milkweed. And not only does it make us strong, said Millie, but it gives strength to the butterflies which feast upon us, for if we are strong and delicious it makes them strong and beautiful. Ah, said Mamie, it's fine to have butterflies and children for friends, and to have our very own milkman always with us. We're never forgotten in the early mornings by any possible accident. No, we always have our milkman and we have friends. Hello, telephone peas and string beans, said Lord Lettuce. Lady Lettuce and the lettuce youngsters are coming up, too, and there are going to be lots of crops of us. We make a fine salad, we're so young and tender and fresh. Seems to me, telephone peas, you hurried me up. You know this is our second crop. We've been here before, but I do believe it was your very name that hurried me. I heard you say it and I acted as my relatives say people do when they hear the telephone. I've even heard that they've left the salad on their plates and have answered the telephone before they ate their salad. Yes, your very name and saying it must have hurried us. Well, said the telephone peas, we feel up to date. We don't know that there is any special reason for our name, but we have grown to like it mighty well. We're supposed to be a large, good kind, too. In fact, one of the best there are. Dear me, said one of the string beans. I wish someone would call our family the airplane string beans or something like that. Or perhaps we might be called the submarine string beans. There wouldn't be much sense to that, said the potato, almost ready to eat, for you are up on vines. Now we might have that name because we're in the ground, though it is true we are not under the water. And the garden vegetables all agreed that that was true, but that the Telephone peas had a fine family name in reality. The musk ox, said Daddy, is prepared for the rain by the coarse hair which grows on top of his nice, soft hair. This coarse hair, as you know, catches the rain and then he shakes it all off so that his body doesn't get wet. The umbrella bird can put up some of his feathers just as people put up their umbrellas, and that protects him from the rain. Both the great big musk ox and the little umbrella bird are very proud that they always have their rain protectors with them, and they have very little use for people who forget their umbrellas and borrow other people's and then forget to return them. Of course the musk ox and the umbrella bird can't very well lend their umbrellas because they don't carry them around by the beak or front paw, but instead have their umbrellas attached to them. But they aren't the only creatures to be so careful about the rain. That is, there are some flowers who are just as careful, and the harebell, of which I am going to tell you, sees that none of its family will ever drown. Now, the harebell family of flowers are blue in color. The flowers grow on thin, rather tall stems, and when the flowers are in bud they grow very straight and stand right up. When the tiny buds burst into flowers, if they stayed straight up, as they stand when they are buds, every time the rain came it would fill the little flowers and completely drown them, and make them droop forever. The little blue petals aren't strong enough to stand the rain, and the flowers are shaped so the rain would come right into them and fill them up, for the harebells are like little bells. So they drop their little heads just before they open and then the rain can't hurt them. This way to the big show, some children were shouting. Come right along, they said. This is the way to see all the wonders of the age. Look at the frog child, the snake lady, the toad man, the turtle babies. All the children went in the direction from which the shouts and orders were given. The children who were shouting were very much excited. Admission to the show, 10 cents, they kept saying. It's the most wonderful show in the world. There were a dozen children giving a play circus which was supposed to be very much like a real one. They had asked all their friends and the money they received was to go to a children's ward in a hospital. Every one of their friends came and soon the circus began. First of all there was a long parade while some of the children beat drums and others played tunes on combs covered with tissue paper. 2 little girls rode ponies and on the heads of the ponies sat 2 monkeys made of cloth. They had bead eyes. A boy did a lot of fine tricks on a rocking horse, and there were all the usual circus tricks, although perhaps not some of the more difficult ones. After a little while a boy came out on the platform and said, Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, cats and dogs, we have now to offer a fine performance, a sideshow. We have shown you the regular acts of the circus and we trust that you are pleased. Here followed a great deal of clapping and shouting. And, the boy continued, we are now to have the great privilege of seeing the frog child, the snake lady, the toad man, the turtle babies. Step this way, ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, cats and dogs. Come right inside the tent at your left and there you will see these things. There is no extra charge for admission. All the children at once began to troop to their left through the side tent. What could it mean? They asked each other. What surprises they were getting. When they were inside the tent how they did laugh. One of the children was in just such a green suit as Mr. Frog would wear and really looked quite a good deal like a grandson of Grandpa Frog. He was hopping about singing in a queer croaking voice. Galoo, galoo, goo-gay-room, goo-gay-room. Another child who looked like a snake, because she wore an imitation snakeskin, said, Come and see the snake lady. I eat things whole, and as she said this she swallowed a tiny crumb. I am the toad man, come and see me, grunted the toad. Or rather the child who was dressed like one. We are the turtle babies. We snap, we play, we draw in our heads under our shells. And sure enough they were doing all these tricks. Their costumes were really quite wonderful, although they had been made mostly out of paper. All the children who were looking on were quite delighted and said, We think you are marvelous. And all the children dressed like animals made bows and said thank you in voices that sounded a great deal like the voices of snakes, toads, frogs and turtles. Won't you tell me what your name means? Asked Effie Elf of Mr. Bank. Swallow. Really, you have such a curious name and I've always been anxious to find out what it means. My name is Bank Swallow because I and my family build our nests in holes in banks. By banks I mean the banks out of doors and not the banks where one saves one's money. We are very friendly with one another, and we have big towns and villages and cities of nests of bank swallows. We're the very smallest of the swallow family, I believe. And we can always be known by our neckbands which we wear on our gray throats. Our neckbands are much darker and show very clearly. We dress in simple brown and gray, though our throats are white. We have tunnels and long entrances to our homes, and at the end of our tunnels we build the nest. Yes, we're rather unusual, I believe. Very unusual, said Effie Elf. Fancy nesting in a hole in a bank rather than in a tree. That is quite odd, quite different from most of the birds. So your name has nothing to do with banks where they have money? She asked. Nothing at all, said the bank swallow. We haven't any need of money. Of course if we needed it we'd probably save some for the bad days and spend the rest on good insects to eat and other delicacies. But we don't have to pay for what we eat, so we don't need any money. Besides, we'd be ashamed to open bank accounts for the banks are used to so much money that they'd laugh at us. Oh, nonsense, said Effie Elf, the good ones wouldn't do that. For no one who amounts to anything makes fun of anyone else not having so much. People who don't amount to much put on airs. Then I'll always be able to tell, said the bank swallow.